Esteban. I'm with Acapulco Driving School. I'm an instructor here. Today we're going to be going over the pre-trip. Alright, so follow me. We're going to start in the front. First of all, we need to prepare the vehicle. There's 5 steps. Number 1, we need to park the vehicle on level ground. Number 2, we need to have the brakes applied. Number 3, we need to have the engine turned off. Number 4, we need to put the key in our pockets so nobody else moves it while we're checking the vehicle. And the last thing, number 5, is to check for free space all the way around the vehicle. Alright? So now we're going to look underneath the engine compartment. We're looking for no leaks, no puddles, nothing underneath that's hanging, any wires or any loose parts. We're looking for types of fluids such as oil, antifreeze, diesel, windshield washer fluid, or just any type of fluid. Next, we got the front bumper. We're looking for no cracks, no visible damages, all bolts properly mounted and secured. We're looking at the edges, not touching the tires. The license plate must be present, no damages, properly mounted and secured. If it has a sticker, make sure that it's dated and not expired. Registration goes inside the cab. Up next, we got the headlights. In the headlights, we're looking for no cracks, no damages, properly mounted and secured. Make sure it's clear, okay? And then we have one headlight that has 2 functions inside. We've got the high beam and the low beam. And the high beam, the visibility on the high beam is 500 feet. Visibility on the low beam is 300 feet. Make sure it's functional, no damages, okay? If it has 2 headlights, it has 1 function. One is a high beam and the other one is a low beam, okay? So now let's move on to the turn signals. Make sure it's not loose, not damaged, no cracks, properly mounted and secured. It has 3 functions. We got the turn signal, 4-way flashers, and position lights, okay? Make sure it's amber in color, no damages, okay? Next, we got the hood. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, no damages, no holes, properly latching and unlatching, opening and closing, okay? Next, we got the windshield and the windshield wipers. Make sure that the windshield is not cracked, not damaged. Make sure that the rubber seal is all the way around. You got no obstructions to the view of the driver. The only legal stickers allowed are the safety, insurance, and the city sticker. The safety inspection is on the other side. It's the one that usually has a different color. Okay. Also, make sure that the windshield wipers are functional. There's no damages, no cuts, no frays, and proper tension to the windshield. Okay. And you check them that they're actually working from the inside of the cab. Next, we got the fire lights on top of the cab. Those fire lights all together are called marker lights. The 3 in the middle are called identification lights, and 1 on each side are called clearance lights. The 3 in the middle, the identification lights, represent the vehicle width, and the clearance lights represent the vehicle's height. Okay? Make sure they're not loose, no damage, properly mounted and secured, amber in color, and functional. Okay? Next, we got the air shield. Okay, which is the top of the cab. The air shield, make sure it's properly mounted and secure, no missing bolts, no damages. Next, we got the air horn radio and the CD antennas. They're under the air shield. Make sure there's no damage, present, not loose. Okay. Next, we got the vehicle dimensions. We got the trailer height and width. The trailer's height is 13.5 feet high. The width of the trailer is 8 feet wide. The tractor is 12.5 feet high. Okay. Next, we got the lights on top of the trailer, which are in the corner. Those are called the clearance lights on the trailer. Make sure they're not loose, no damage, amber in color, functional, and they represent the trailer's maximum height, and they're also located on each corner of the trailer. Under the hood, we're looking for no damages, no leaks. All the wires and hoses must be properly insulated, no cuts, no damages. You got to check all proper fluid levels, okay? Make sure that the belts, they're not missing, not loose, not damaged. You got the free play in between the belts, which should be 3/4 of an inch of free play. Make sure there's no missing or loose parts. Good condition all around, okay? Next, we got the suspension system on the steering axle, okay? The front axle is called the steering axle, and then the one in the back, that's called the drive axle, and on the trailer it's called the trailer axle. So right now we're going to talk about the suspension system on the steering axle, okay? It's very important that you know the difference between them. So you got the frame, okay? You got the spring hanger, the the spring leaves, the U-bolt with the saddle mounted tight to the axle. You got your shock absorber with the rubber bushings. You got your C-clamp and your shackle, which is all the way over here. All right. So, and those are all the parts of the suspension system on the steering axle that we're looking for. Okay. Next is the steering system. Okay. We got the steering wheel. We got the steering wheel shaft. We got the universal joint. The steering gearbox. Pitman arm. We got the drag link. We got the steering ring knuckle, which is this one right here. We got the spindle, which we really can't see because it's inside the rim. We got the steering arm, which is all the way over here. It's right there. Okay, and then we got the tie rod. Okay, the tie rod with the tie rod ends. All right. So now we're gonna move on to checking the tires. Okay. These tires are called the steering tires or the front axle tires. We're looking for same size and kind on both sides. Make sure they're original virgin tires. So that means that no recaps are allowed. We got the tread depth on the tires should be 4/32 of an inch minimum. Okay. No cuts, no large bulges. Properly mounted and sealed to the rim. 100 psi. Make sure you got free space all the way around. Okay. So next up, we got the rims. On the rims, we're looking for no cracks, no damages. If cracked, then you need to replace it because no welding is allowed. You're also making sure that it has all proper lug nuts. They're properly mounted and secured. If you see any rust or shining behind lug nuts, that means that they're damaged or loose, okay? So you gotta check that. Next, we got the hubcap. On the hubcap, we're making sure it has no missing bolts or nuts. Make sure there's no leaks. If you have a leak, that means that it can catch on fire, the brakes can catch on fire, or you can have brake malfunction. Okay, make sure to check the fluid level. You need to park the vehicle on level ground, and then you take the cap out and you insert your finger or screwdriver to check the fluid level. You should use 80 W90 gear oil for this. Okay. Next up, we got the valve stem. Okay, in the valve stem, we're making sure that there's no leaks, no damages, cap present and tight and accessible. Okay. Next, we got the doors. In the doors, you need to mention both driver's side and passenger side. No damages, properly secured, opening and closed, and functional. All right. So next, we got the mirrors. Okay. So in the mirrors, we make sure that it has proper brackets, not loose or damaged. We're checking the small round mirror. It's called the convex mirror. The large flat mirror is called the West Coast mirror. Make sure it's clean, no cracks, no damages. If it has a wire present, make sure it's properly insulated, no cuts, no damages. And if it has a wire, it's usually used for insulation. It's used for heated mirrors or to adjust the mirrors. Okay. So next, we got the fuel tank. On the fuel tank, we're making sure it has 2 steps minimum. Make sure you're clean of any mud, snow, or debris. It has 2 straps with the rubber bushings. It must have a cap present and tight. Make sure it's no leaking from the cap, from the fuel lines, or underneath. It should have free space all the way around. No welding is allowed. And it shouldn't be touching anything, especially the exhaust system. Okay? So next, we're looking at the exhaust system. Making sure it's properly mounted. It has no black spots on the muffler, because if it has black spots, it means that it's leaking. And if it has a straight pipe, make sure you apply a rain cap on it, okay? And also, it shouldn't be touching the fuel tank, so make sure you mention that if they ask you on both, okay? So next, we got the battery box. On the battery box, we're gonna make sure that the cover is present, that it's properly mounted and secured to the frame, it's properly connected, the red goes to positive, black to negative, and that you have no acid leaks, okay? Next is the catwalk. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured, it's clean and not damaged, okay? So let's move on to the air lines and the power cord. Okay, so we got the red line, which means that it's the emergency line. We got the blue line, which means it's the service line. And then we got the green line, which is an electrical cord. It can be also any color, okay? So on the lines, we're making sure there's no cracks, no air leaks, no damages. It's properly insulated. You should have free space from the catwalk, 6 to 12 inches. You should have enough free play in order to turn. Okay, you gotta make sure that your lines are straight as possible from the trailer to the tractor. Okay, and then next we got the connections. All right, so in the connections, in the electrical cord, make sure it's properly connected to a 7-pin receptacle, and you're making sure it has no rust or no damages. Okay, make sure it's properly connected. Okay, on the glad hands, which are these parts right here, you're looking for in the inside of the seal, the rubber seal. Okay, the proper name of the seal is called the grommet seal. Okay, make sure it's not damaged, it's not badly damaged, there's no debris or any water inside, and it should feel soft to the touch. Okay, if you're driving without the trailer, it's called bobtailing, and what you'll do is you'll put the glad hands and electrical cord into the dummy couplers, which is that right there. And if you don't have the dummy couplers, you're gonna connect them to the highest point where your airlines and power cord are connected. Okay, so next we got the parts, the suspension system on the drive axle. Okay, so we got the frame, we got the spring hanger, we got the torque arm, which is that part right there, we got the spring leaves. Okay, we got the U-bolt with the saddle mounted tight to the axle, we got the shock absorber, and then we got the airbag all the way in the back right there. All right, and we can get a better view on this side. That's the airbag right there. Okay, so and those are all the parts of the suspension system on the drive axle. So next we're gonna move on to the drag tires. Okay, the drag tires, making sure that you got the same size and kind on both sides. There's no damages, no large cuts or bulges. Properly mounted to the rim, 100 psi minimum. You're looking at the thread depth, which differs from the front, which is 2/32 of an inch minimum. And since you got 2 tires, that's called full tires. Right? So you're looking for nothing in between any objects, rocks or wood that can fly off and hit a car or pedestrian. Making sure that the space between the 2 tires is 3 inches, and the space between the tire and the trailer should be 5 inches or more. Okay, recaps are allowed, so you make sure that it has no damages on the recap. There's not so much separation on the recap. Okay, that's it. So basically almost kind of the same, except it has different parts, which is the dual tire and the thread depth changes on this one. Okay, from the steering tires. So next we got the 5th wheel. All right, so in the 5th wheel, we're making sure that it's 0 space. All right, it's properly lubricated to prevent steering problems. You got this right here, which is called the release handle or the pin lock. You gotta make sure it's all the way in the lock position. Okay, and then let me take you on this side. All right, so then what you gotta mention right here is that the locking jaw locks around the shank of the kingpin, which is that metal part in the back. There's a diagram in your pre-trip. Okay, so next we got the mud flaps or the splash guards. You gotta make sure you're not touching the floor, you're not touching the tires. They got enough free space all the way around. They're not damaged, not loose, no missing bolts. All right, and good condition. All right, so next we got the landing gear. In the landing gear, you gotta make sure that it's fully raised, the sand shoes are clean. You got your support arms, which are these right here, and your cross beam, which is this right here. All right, so cross beam and support arms, you gotta make sure you're present and tight. They don't have to be loose. All right, this right here is called the crank handle. Make sure that the crank handle is operational and secured into the bracket, which is this right here. Okay, make sure everything is properly lubricated. Welding is allowed, and you gotta make sure you got free space from the back of the tractor, okay, in case you're turning. Next up, we got the trailer sidewall. On the trailer sidewall, you gotta make sure that there's no damages, no holes, no cuts. On-wall welding is allowed, okay? If you have any rivets, make sure you got no missing rivets, because if one's missing, all of them can fall off. So you gotta replace it as soon as possible, all right? And then you got this gray area right here. It's called the trailer support rail, okay? This is what differs from the top, okay? Because on the top, on the wall, on-wall welding is allowed. But on the bottom, which is the trailer support rail, if you have a cut that's vertical, no welding is allowed. If you got a cut that's horizontal, welding is allowed up to a foot, okay? And right here, it doesn't matter what direction or what size. On-weld welding is allowed. Just keep in mind that right here it differs, okay? So let's move on. Alright, so we got the hoses hanging under the trailer. They have to be 18 inches off the ground. You gotta make sure there's no damages, no air leaks, okay? And they must be in good condition. Next, we got the final suspension system, which is on a trailer axle. We got the frame, we got the spring hangers, okay? We got the spring leaves, which I'll point this one right here, okay? We got the U-bolt with the saddle mounted tight to the axles, okay? We got the stabilizer bar, we got the torque arm. One's fixed and one's adjustable. And the reason I can tell which one's fixed and which one's adjustable is that the one that's adjustable has the adjustable nuts, okay, and it's used for alignment. We got the slide axle, and the purpose of the slide axle is to balance the load inside the trailer. And then finally on this side, you got your equalizer, okay? That's your equalizer, and that's to balance the load between the tandem axles. And in case you're wondering what a tandem axle is when you have two axles together side by side. That's called a tandem axle, okay? This is not the equalizer, okay? So don't get this confused. This is the equalizer. Alright? This one too is an equalizer. This is a spring hanger, just in case you're wondering, okay? So now let's move on to the back of the truck. Let's go underneath right here. I will now explain how the air brake system works, okay? So first of all, the compressor builds air and sends air to the air tank through the governor and the air dryer, which are in the front of the truck. Okay, when the driver steps on the service brake, air in the air tank goes to the brake chamber. Air in the brake chamber pushes the push rod out, which is this right here, and rotates the slack adjuster, which moves the S-cam shaft and the S-cam roller, which is inside, you really can't see it, and applies the brake shoes onto the brake drums, creating friction, and the vehicle stops. When the driver releases the service brake, the return spring, which is this right here, you can see it right there, brings brakes back into the original position. And that's how the air brake system works, okay? Another question they might ask you down here is, what are you looking for in the brake drums and the brake shoes, okay? You gotta make sure that the brake drum and brake shoe, there's no missing parts, no cracks, no damages, no water or oil inside, because they can become slippery. And on the brake pads, you gotta make sure it has a 1/4 of an inch minimum thread, okay? And also, they can also ask you how they ask you over there in the hubcap, which is if it's leaking, what can happen? Your brakes can malfunction or you can catch on fire, okay? Another thing that I can add to this is how you adjust the slack adjuster, okay? So in order to adjust the slack adjuster, you need to prepare your vehicle. Number one, you need to park the vehicle on level ground. Number two, check the wheels. Number three, check for normal air pressure, 90 to 120 psi. Number four, put the transmission in low gear. Number five, turn the engine off. Number six, put the key in your pocket so nobody else moves it while you're under the vehicle. Number seven, release, push in both spring brakes. And then finally, you can go outside, put some gloves on so you won't be dirty like me. And you can pull on the slack adjuster, okay? You pull on the slack adjuster and you're checking for free play. You shouldn't have no more than 1 inch of free play. If it has more than 1 inch of free play, you need to adjust it on the adjustment nut, which is this one right here, okay? Alright, so now let's go in the back of the truck. Watch it. You tired? Alright. Now finally we're in the rear of the trailer, okay? So right here what they will ask you is, they might try to confuse you. They might say if the taillights are all the lights that we have in the back of the trailer. The answer is no. The reason for that is because you got the license plate light and it's not considered a taillight, okay? A taillight should be red in color, alright? And this is white in color. So then that's the way that you can know, alright? So let's talk about the taillights. The taillights should be red in color, not damaged, not loose, properly mounted and secured, functional. The inside lights, which are these right here, that one too, are the brake lights. The outside lights, which are these on the outside, are turn signal, four-way flashers, and position signals, okay? And then the three at the top, okay? Those are called the identification lights, and they serve as the width of the vehicle, okay? Next, we got the license plate and the license plate light. Make sure that the license plate is properly mounted and secure, no damages. You got a sticker present, make sure it's up to date. On the license plate light, make sure it's functional, white in color, no damages, okay? Next, we got the bumper. The name of the bumper is called an ICC bumper or DOT bar. They might ask you what ICC stands for. That's Interstate Commerce Commission, and DOT is Department of Transportation. You're looking for the clearance off the ground. It should be 18 to 24 inches off the ground. The bumper is there to prevent cars from going underneath the trailer in case of an accident. And you gotta make sure it has no damages, it's not loose, okay? Next, we got the door, okay? This type of door is called the roll-up door. The one that opens up side to side is called a swing door, okay? You're looking for no damages, okay? Properly mounted and secured, properly latched or locked, okay? Okay. All right. So now we're gonna go inside the truck, okay? So we're looking on the floor. We're making sure it's clean, no damages, no holes, especially on the winter, no oils, okay? And making sure there's nothing that can get stuck under the pedals, okay? So now let's move on to the pedals. First of all, before we check the pedals, we must have the engine running because we're gonna check the clutch. We're checking for engagement, okay? So let's start with the accelerator pedal. On the accelerator pedal, make sure it has grooves or the rubber, okay? The grooves are these cuts, these ridges right here, so your foot won't slip, okay? So rubber or grooves present, the accelerator goes all the way down to the floor and it must come back up freely, okay? That's it. Next is the brake pedal. Rubber or grooves present, it doesn't go all the way down to the floor, but it must come back up freely. The pedal must feel firm, not spongy, okay? And then finally we got the clutch. The rubber or grooves present, it goes all the way down to the floor and it must come back up freely, okay? And then you got engagement, which is 1.5 to 3 inches of free play, which is when you feel or hear engagement on the truck, okay? So next we got the DOT equipment. The DOT equipment on the vehicle, we have 4 in total. We got the fire extinguisher, we got the reflective triangles, we got the spare fuses and spare circuit breakers, and then we got the seat belt, okay? So on the fire extinguisher, making sure it's properly mounted and secured either to the floor or to the wall. Make sure it has a safety pin on to prevent accidental discharge. Make sure it's properly dated and not expired. Make sure it's properly rated, which is ABC or BC10. And also you gotta make sure it's fully charged, and you do that by looking in the gauge, okay? And it should be in the green area. That means it's fully charged, okay? Next up, we got the 3 reflective triangles, which are in that box over there. So you gotta make sure that the triangles are stand up by themselves, red in color, reflective, and there are 3 in the box, okay? Next, we got the spare fuses and spare circuit breakers. So basically, you're just looking that you have as many as you have in the fuse box, and you put them either in your glove box or in the tool box, okay? And then finally, the most important DOT equipment or safety equipment is the seat belt, okay? So in the seat belt, you gotta make sure it has no cuts, not torn, no damages. It properly latches and unlatches, and it's functional. It actually grabs you. All right, so next we got the steering wheel. On the steering wheel, we're making sure it has no damages, no cracks. In order to check the steering wheel, we must have the engine running. And the reason for that is to check the free play, okay? The free play on the steering wheel should be 10 degrees to each side or 2 inches to each side on a 20-inch diameter wheel, okay? The city horn must be working. Again, make sure there's no cracks or no damages. Next up, we got the gauges, okay? We're supposed to know the names of the gauges, okay? Basically, we already have the names in them, okay? So this is the oil pressure, which is PSI, and then just add a gauge at the end, okay? So oil pressure gauge, you got your water temperature gauge, your battery gauge or your volt gauge, okay? You got your fuel gauge, and then you got your air pressure gauge. These are the only ones that have different names. This one's called the tachometer, and this one's called the speedometer, okay? Next, we got the names of the brakes, okay? The yellow brake is called the tractor sprint brake or the parking brake. The red one is called the trailer emergency sprint brake, okay? The handle is called the trailer service brake or the Johnson bar or the handbrake. And then finally, you got the foot pedal, which is called the combination brake or the service brake, okay? So we're gonna check those right now. Alright, so next we're gonna check the brakes, okay? The yellow one is called the tractor sprint brake or the parking brake. The red one is called the trailer emergency sprint brake. The handle is called the trailer service brake. Alright, Johnson bar or trailer handbrake. And then we got the foot pedal, it's called the combination brake or the service brake, okay? So we're gonna perform all the steps. They might ask you to explain, which just means to talk how the steps work, okay? But in this case, we're gonna perform all of them. So we're gonna perform and check to see if the tractor sprint brake is working. So in order to do that, you need to have two conditions. The engine must be running. You gotta have normal air pressure, 90 to 120 psi, okay? To check the tractor sprint brake, I will release, push in the trailer emergency sprint brake, and then I will apply, pull out the tractor sprint brake. I'll put the transmission in low gear. I will try to move the vehicle. Okay, and then since the vehicle did not move, that means that the tractor sprint brake is working, okay? And then I will put it back to neutral, okay, before releasing the clutch. So next, we're gonna check how the trailer emergency sprint brake works, okay? So in order to do that, again, the two conditions, okay? Engine must be on, and you're gonna have normal air pressure, 90 to 120 psi, okay? You will pull out or apply the trailer emergency sprint brake, and you will release, pushing the tractor sprint brake. You will put the transmission in low gear. You will try to move the vehicle. Okay, if the vehicle does not move, that means that the trailer emergency sprint brake is working. And what I'm doing here is, when I put it on low gear, I just gently release the clutch. When I feel it that the truck wants to move, I put the clutch all the way in, okay? Because if I release it, then the truck is gonna stall, okay? So next, we're gonna check the trailer service brake, okay? So in order to check the trailer service brake, again, those two same conditions, okay? Engine must be running. You're gonna have normal air pressure, which is 90 to 120 psi. To check the trailer service brake, I need to release, push in both my sprint brakes. I'll put the transmission on low gear, okay? I would advance forward 10 or 15 feet or 5 miles per hour. I will apply the clutch in first and then pull on the trailer service brake, okay? And then I'm looking at both sides of the mirror, making sure that my vehicle does not pull side to side. If the vehicle does pull side to side, then there's some problems that can be wrong, okay? We're gonna talk about those later. But the vehicle should come to a stop. If the vehicle stops, that means that my trailer service brake is working, okay? And then I will secure my vehicle. All right, so next we're gonna check the combination brake. To check the combination brake, again, those same two conditions. Engine must be on, and you're gonna have normal air pressure, which is 90 to 120 psi. To check the combination brake, I need to release, push in my tractor, my trailer sprint brake. I will put the transmission on low gear. I would advance forward 10 or 15 feet, 5 miles per hour, okay? Clutch in first, and then my combination brake, okay? I'm checking on both mirrors, making sure that my vehicle does not pull side to side, okay? And then my vehicle does stop, that means that the combination brake is working, okay? And then I will secure my vehicle. Now, if my vehicle does move side to side, this is what can be wrong. There's 5 possibilities, okay? You got your brakes could need adjustment, low air pressure on the tires, steering system problems, suspension system problems, and unbalanced cargo on the trailer, okay? So then those are your causes in case the vehicle pulls side to side when you use your combination brake or you pull on your trailer service brake, okay? So next we're gonna do the air leaks test, okay? So what the inspectors will ask you is, how many air leaks tests do we have? The answer to that is 2 of them. We got the static test and we got the applied test, okay? So let's perform the static test, okay? So first, we need to prepare the vehicle. Number 1, park the vehicle level ground. Number 2, track the wheels. Number 3, check for normal air pressure, 90 to 120 psi, build up if necessary. Number 4, put the transmission in low gear. Okay. Number 5, turn the engine off. Okay, and then I let go my clutch. And then number 6, release push in my trailer and my tractor spring brakes. Okay, so both of them. So the static test is without touching anything. I'm just looking at my air pressure gauge. I shouldn't lose no more than 3 psi in 1 minute in a combination vehicle, and that checks for leaks in the whole system. Okay, so the next test is the apply test. Okay, so we're gonna perform that too. So first you need to have your engine running. There's some instructors that will just let you continue how it is right now, since it's already prepared, and there's some that want you to turn on the truck. So let's do that. Let me show you how you turn on the truck. First, I will apply my spring brakes. I will put it on neutral because it was on first gear, and then I will turn on the truck. Okay, and with the clutch, of course. All right, so now we're gonna do the apply test. Okay, so for the apply test, I need to do my conditions again. I need to prepare my vehicle. Number 1, park on level ground. Number 2, shock the wheels. Number 3, check for normal air pressure, 90 to 120 psi, build up if necessary. Number 4, put the transmission in low gear. Okay. Number 5, turn the engine off. Okay. And then number 6, release push in my trailer and my tractor spring brakes. Okay. So now I'm gonna apply and hold the brake. Hold it for 1 minute, okay? And you're supposed to look at the gauge. You shouldn't drop no more than 4 psi in a minute in a combination vehicle. And that checks for leaks in the brake chambers, okay? Since you're holding on the brake. Once you're done explaining it or performing it, then you let go of the brake, okay? So now let's move on to the next test, okay? The next set of tests are your fan down tests. You got your fan on number 1 and your fan on number 2. So let's perform fan on number 1. And let's turn on the vehicle again, okay? So how I told you, spring brakes first, put it on neutral, and turn it on with the clutch, okay? All right, so we need to prepare the vehicle, okay? Number 1, park on level ground. Number 2, shock the wheels. Number 3, check for normal air pressure, 90 to 120 psi, build up if necessary. Number 4, put the transmission in low gear. Number 5, turn the engine off. Okay, and then this one has an extra step, okay? So number 6, put the key in the on position, okay? And then number 7, release push in the trailer and the tractor spring brakes, okay? So now what you're gonna do for fan down test is you're gonna pump the brake. You're gonna pump the brake until you reach around 60 psi, and your warning light and warning buzzer must come on, okay? Which is that one right there. Okay, once you're done with this test, they'll tell you to turn off the ignition key, okay, so you won't keep hearing the noise. All right, so now let's move on to the next test, fan on number 2. So again, let's perform, okay? So we're gonna turn on the truck again, or actually we're gonna do it the other way. We're gonna do it the way that we just keep going on, okay? So if they tell you to perform, there's some cases that they'll just tell you to just keep going on instead of turning it on, okay? So we're gonna do that right now. So number 1, park the vehicle on level ground. Number 2, shock the wheels. Number 3, check for normal air pressure, 90 to 120 psi. Since we're doing a fan on test, we don't have to build up pressure in this case, okay? Number 4, put the transmission in low gear. It's already on low gear. Number 5, turn the engine off. It's already off. And then number 6, release push in the tractor and the trailer spring brakes, okay? They're already released. So then we're gonna continue, okay? So we're gonna continue fanning down until we reach around 20 or 40 psi, okay? And once we reach around 20 or 40 psi, then your trailer and your tractor spring brakes should pop out, okay? But first, the trailer emergency spring brake to prevent trailer jackknifing, followed by the tractor spring brake, okay? And this test shows that the spring brakes pop out by themselves in case of an accident, okay? And this test is called the pop-out test, okay? The emergency spring brake test. And there we go. They both popped out. All right? So next, what they'll tell you is to turn the vehicle back on, okay? You just gotta keep in mind that you gotta check that you're on neutral, okay? Right now we're not on neutral, so let's put it on neutral. We gotta make sure that your spring brakes are applied and you turn the vehicle on, okay? All right. then the last thing would be the governor, okay? So what's the purpose of the governor? The purpose of the governor is to maintain normal air pressure, which is 90 to 120 psi. The governor has two different functions. The first function is called the cut-in, and the second function is called the cut-out. The governor cut-in is when the compressor starts sending air to the air tanks, and that happens at 90 psi if the truck is operational, or it happens at 0 psi if the system is empty. Okay? The governor cut-out is when the compressor stops sending air to the air tanks, and that happens at 120 psi and releases the excess air through the air dryer. Okay? That's when you hear the psh. Okay, that's the air dryer functioning. That's 120 psi. Okay. And then you got your compressor buildup rate, which is how fast the compressor builds up air without you touching anything, okay? And that's between 85 to 100 psi, 45 seconds, okay? Or 3 seconds for each psi, okay? And then finally, we have the air safety valve, okay? The air safety valve is in case the governor cutout is not working at 120 psi. The air safety valve is set to open at 150 psi, and that's in case it's building up a lot of air, and the air safety valve opens and releases the abnormal air buildup, and it's located on the wet tank. And this concludes your pre-trip. Again, my name is Esteban, and thank you for watching this. This is Acapulco Driving School. See you later.